Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours, part of the officehours.global network. Find out more and join at officehours.global/join. All right. We have selected a few people that have arrived here to answer some questions around media production and that sort of thing. Audio, video, sound, a bit of AV, a bit of IT, and a bit of AI. We're just trying to use all the acronyms that we might get to tonight. We tend to, we often don't get to every question, although there's currently one question posted, so we should be able to cover that one. And so, but I encourage everyone to post some questions in there. Now that once you see who the panel is, I'll introduce you, and then you'll know the types of questions that you could target to particular panelists. So, Offsider, as always, reading out the questions tonight. Up in Seattle, Washington is Guy Cochran. Hello, Guy.
Hello. Yeah, I was looking at these pretty faces here, and I'm like, well, Carl takes up 1.75 people, so it's not just that we have 4 people, we have 4.75 because we got the bigger brain on deck. So get those questions in there, and Carl's going to be first out with his keynote. He'll be simultaneously doing keynotes while he's queuing up your question. So give him a good one so he could add a graphic, and maybe he'll even make it magic move for you. Challenge.
Very cool. Keeping in the Northern Hemisphere for a moment, down in Hollywood, California, is Courtney Gooden. Hello, Courtney.
Hello. I didn't lose my invitation this time, so, I made it in time. Went to the Denny's early bird special to have dinner in time to make it here. So glad to be here. Hope we make it through the CME that is hitting the Earth just about now. So.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, we'll know if we suddenly get it cut off, what the reason was. We'll see about that. I am in. I don't sound like I'm in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm in the Southern Hemisphere, down in Adelaide, South Australia. And with me just down the road is Carl Asmussen. Hello, Carl.
Hello, everyone. Last week, my computer crashed, and it turned out it was actually a faulty USB-C cable. So the little chipset in there had failed. It took me about 60 minutes to fault find exactly what it was. I thought it was a drive. The drive turned out to be okay. It was actually the cable connecting to the drive. The cable's probably 10 years old, so good idea maybe sometimes to change your USB-C. This was a high-speed USB-C cable, but sometimes good idea to change it if it's being plugged into that computer for forever.
There you go. Well, that's a good tip, and we're glad that you made it tonight. There's actually quite a few people in the chat tonight, which is lovely. Peter and Florence and Brian from the UK, that's cool. Jason, Alexander, Wayne Fox from Sydney. G'day, mate. Nice to have you here. Ian from over the ditch in New Zealand. We have Kyle, David Paskin, making a little appearance in the chat there, who hosts the Thursday show on Office Hours. So you have to check that out. There's been some great topics of late with David. And I think I saw Tamara as well. She's often on that show too. And Chris and Peter. 1F Jeff is messing around the back end and in the chat as well, which is cool. And Mark and Mickey, look at that. All right, that's all we've got time for. We read all the names of the people in the chat. Now is the time to post questions. Generally, the way that we try to work this show is we go for about an hour, and it depends on the topics. We tend to do lots of the other shows. We try to slam through as many questions as we can and get answers, quickly to people. In this particular one, sometimes we can be a bit more philosophical and wax on a little bit more about it and sort of dive into topics a bit more. But we still take the lead from the questions. And so at about the 30-minute mark is when we'll lock the question, so we can't ask any more questions at that point, and we'll take the ones that we have. So at that point, it's really important to vote on the questions in Makana. If you don't know what Makana is, then when you go to officehours.global/join, you'll get links to be able sign up and get into where the chat system is and where you can post questions. If you don't want to log in and do all of that rigmarole, you can go to askofficehours.global and you can post questions simply there. And so that will work across all of the shows. But if it's posted in the next little while, the next 10-15 minutes, chances are we'll pick it up and we may be able to get to that tonight. All right, so that is that. Let's get to the first question we've got here, Guy. What's that?
Swinging right out the gate. Brisbane, Australia, Gil Carter asking, when will Blackmagic add IP2110 capabilities to the Atem Constellation switchers?
Courtney.
Well, I think they're getting pretty close, because first they have to lay the framework in with the converters. And so they've already got all these little teeny boxes that convert to 2110 from a variety of sources, SDI and HDMI. And then they've got the bigger boys down here, the converter boxes that handle 8 or 4 conversions, and each the big 1 RU panel. So I would assume that the next step is going to be to take it to the next level and do the constellation switchers so that they will handle it natively to do that. I don't know for sure. Usually they announce something right about now, usually about a month before NAB. Grant warms up all the equipment and that giant counter that he pulls stuff out from behind and shows us some new stuff. So I'm counting on him showing some new stuff with 2110, perhaps the constellation.
I remember that timeline differently than you do,
really,
Courtney, because I think it's often like just a couple of days before they go live. But yeah, okay, all right, we can we can fight about it. I'm actually trying to find like the last years and to see what the date was, so we could use facts on this show. That would be.
This is America. We don't deal in facts.
All right, Carl, what do you got on this?
So if we take a look at how this actually works in actual production now, so 2110 is a transport layer. So it's transporting between places. It also acts as distributed routing. So generally you're going to hit a router first before you hit a switch, because you're going to go into a switch, but you're also going to go into ISO records, like let's say Hyperdeck, for instance. So it makes more sense that they don't do that because they already have that product. So if you think like a CCU doesn't run 2110 from the camera. It runs essentially SMPTE fiber because it also needs to send power, so it needs copper and fiber as well. So you do have specific connections between certain things. So if you're thinking, okay, I want 2110 straight from a camera into a switch without going through a CCU or without going through a router, that's not really how it's designed to work. It's designed to work to go into a CCU if you're going to use that, but vast majority of their studio cameras do this. And then you go into a router, and then that router will get distributed into a switcher. The router and the switcher will always be baseband. It doesn't really matter. Even 8K is baseband up in here because they just use 4 channels of 12G. So it doesn't make much sense to put 2110 into a switch. But if you're talking about IP, they've already got that. So they already have a new family of switches, which there's 2 in the family so far. So there's the Atem Studio, Television Studio, HD8 ISO, and Extreme G2. These 2 switches are a new family of switches, and they accept IP direct in. So just think like NDI, but it's not NDI, it's actually open because, well, it's not open, it's technically H.264, but it can only talk at the moment. The ingest can only be from a Blackmagic device, but we can now export to third-party devices, which is something new that Blackmagic recently added. But this is all a bit of a moot point from that point because it's all coming with Blackmagic Cloud. So what it is your Atem can be a destination from Blackmagic Cloud. So you can have sources of cameras in other countries, and then you can simply point those cameras at a switcher in another country. And you simply just use Blackmagic Router in the cloud router. Not people are confusing the Atem in the cloud with the router. They're 2 separate products. The router is the more powerful one because it allows you to use hardware in all places. So no software switching, it's all hardware switching, but you're routing everything through the cloud. And you can route to multiple destinations, and you only pay per destination. You don't pay per source. So you can have 100 cameras coming in for free, and if you only want to go to 2 places, and you route, so you can actually switch on the router if you really want to. You can save money that way. You can simply just go off and switch on the router to, well, let's say 4 or 8, but you can bring in like so many cameras. And this is like, I always go back to Eurovision. So Eurovision, they go out to every country. So when they do the voting and the votes come in, they go to every country. Let's say it's 36 countries. So they have 36, or probably more than 36, but let's say minimum 36 inputs coming in, but they're only showing, 2 or 3 sources at a time. So, maybe 4 sources total with the graphics, the person in the studio, the person in the country. So all that stuff. So you don't need to actually route every single one into the switcher. You can actually go, okay, you can pre-route stuff, and you can do this right now with Blackmagic, but they just don't have the interface, but it can be done right now. If you read the Blackmagic's press releases, they tell you how to do it. But 2110 if you stop and think about it, remember that you need, let's say, 10G for every connection. So you need a 10G input. So that 10G input just simply replaces what would be an SDI connector. So you don't save anything there. It's actually more expensive because then you have to convert, you have to convert the 2110 into baseband. So that's an extra cost per chipset. Then saying, well, what if you use like a 100 gig connector? Well, 100 gig connector does that will cover maybe 10 inputs. That's true. So you get 10 inputs. But again, that 100 gig connector then needs to go into a whole chipset of its own. Then that will convert it down to the 10 separate streams, and those separate streams need to be converted to baseband. It's much better for switcher wants to, and then you have latency. That's an enormous amount of latency added to switch. With a switch, you don't want any latency, or you want maybe just like one line of latency, like simply one line of latency. So that's where the switch is so important. If you have one line of latency, you will have a frame of latency, or probably half a frame of latency if we start to put in like a 100 gig line that needs to be separated to 10 and then separated down again. So there are latency considerations when using 2110, which you don't want to add to a switch if you don't need it. If it's IP you want, Blackmagic's already got that. They may add it to the bigger switches. At the moment, it's with a maximum of 8 inputs on both of the 2 switches that belong to that family. But 2110 kind of ends, the pipeline for 2110 should end just before the router. So, and that's what Blackmagic have. They have the hardware for this, which is 8 channels in of 2110, and then outputs 8 SDIs, which you pop into a router, and then you route off to wherever you need it in your control room. So I don't know if 2110, and like they've also got their 2110 card, PCIe card, which accepts 2 100 gig connections. So that would solve a lot of problems there as well for if you want to do software switching. So right now, technically in vMix, you can do it. So, or, Nimio Live, you can do it right now. If you simply buy the 2110 card that enables you to have 32 inputs. So it's up to you, but so software switching, they can do it right now. It'd be interesting if they release an Atem software switching, not just the cloud one, because that'd be very interesting.
It's something that John said. John Waller said that in the chat, saying maybe that I think we'll see a software-based switcher from them before they build a box.
Because they've got the card that supports it, and he said that it's doing 32 now, but it could do more. So that's 1080 we're talking about. But that's I think that's right. I think we could see a software version, because obviously they're going to run a version of Atem probably on a Linux server for their cloud solution that they're going to provide to people. So my guess is they'll get that up and running, and then they may offer a software. It makes sense. I don't know when, but it makes sense. And I think that may be the route they go down and put vMix out of business.
Maybe. All right. Next question. We've got 10 questions tonight. So
10 questions. Amazing. Andre Dole from Berlin asks, how does setting up a local AI work? What are the pros and cons?
Carl?
Yeah, so Apple just released this a couple of weeks ago, so people may have seen certain people on YouTube being lent the systems, which are for Mac Studios, and what it is, it's simply daisy chained. It's a round robin daisy chain of Thunderbolt 5, and essentially the people who are running this, and essentially what they did was they added in the operating system, they enabled a certain way of processing of information via Thunderbolt networking, which speeds up the process. And essentially AI is, when we talk AI, what we're really talking about is token. So I need to use a token, and token costs money. So this is why you get, if you use a free version of AI, you get a certain amount of tokens per day, and then they cut you off. If you have the paid version of AI, then you actually see how many tokens you have. Some actually just say you got this many tokens you can use per day or per week, whatever. So essentially what's happened is these people who were lent these systems, now these systems are going to set you back around $50,000 to $60,000, which is very cheap considering how much just a normal server would cost sometimes. They will cost you maybe $1 million just a single server that can do some high compute. So what Apple's done is they're going, okay, and it can do like above like 10 tokens a second, which is absolutely crazy. So 10 tokens, and this is, you spend $50,000, it can do 10 tokens a second, and people are throwing all the different hard models at this. Even like the biggest, most hardest models to run are running like 4 tokens a second. Now, 4 tokens a second may not seem like much, but this is you. You can do this all day, every day, and you can have multiple clusters doing this. So if you need to run AI and you don't want to be limited by a third-party company saying how many you can use and you've got to pay them, and you just want to outlay the investment, Apple now has this pathway using, obviously, they're using current hardware, which is the M3 Ultras and in the Mac Studios, but obviously there's a version of the Mac Pro coming, which probably will have an M5 Ultra, and the M5 Ultra has on it already the accelerated GPU for AI. So it looks like they're doing this reminds me of maybe the development version of the M1, which was technically an A14 inside a Mac Mini, for people who remember, and you had to give these back. And that's exactly what they've done now. I think that Apple is doing this to figure out all the bugs and all that and get feedback from real world people who want to run these AI models and people who deal with these AI models on their local clusters themselves, because it's going to go into the M5 Mac Pro. And the M5 Mac Pro, they can just put in cards, and you can just simply slot in cards and they just simply have other M5s on them. So you just do the cluster inside the actual Mac Pro itself.
So for my setup that I have here, it's a Kron starts laughing because he realizes he was muted. And
do you know what was funny about that is that normally I would have picked it up straight away, but there was this time I had said my full sentence and sat back and was like, all right, why is guy not talking?
You should ask for permission. So I want to show you guys something. This is a B-Link by Courtney. So this is what I'm running some local AI on. Now it's different than what Carl was talking about, because I'm using Claude Code, but what I'm using this machine for is to store my files locally. So this is much different, where you run out of context, or if you try to build something in ChatGPT, for instance, you'll pretty soon hit a limit. And what this allows you to do is store these MD files and then recall them and say, like, hey, where are we at with this project? And it'll go back and it'll say, oh, you left off here. And you could just keep going and going and going. So I asked it to draw something real quick, just so you could kind of get an idea as to how I'm using it. So a user will come in through, I have what's called a Cloudflare tunnel. So basically, if you go to a subdomain on my website, you would hit this Cloudflare tunnel, and then that routes to this. So on this B-Link is Ubuntu, and there's something called Coolify, which is allowing me to create these Docker containers for these apps. So I have apps that are built and they're running on these ports. So like this one's called Mindful Intake, and there's one that's a production, there's one that's a development. There's and then I use Supabase for my database. So this is how I do like Google OAuth or any kind of logins or any kind of like my transcriptions that I'm building for office hours right now. The transcriptions are getting stored in that database. So a lot of stuff isn't actually retained on here. I'll push it up to Supabase, or it'll get written to Supabase as the user enters in their credentials. There's also GitHub, which is where the code goes, and then it gets deployed onto Coolify. So Coolify is basically running the app. It builds it, and then it puts it locally on my machine, so that when the user, again, comes through that Cloudflare tunnel, they hit, and then they're directed to one of these ports, which hosts one of my sites or apps. And let's see what else it did here. I asked it I said, what else? So you're actually looking at Claude Code running on that B-Link right now. I just asked it right before the show when I got this question from Andre. I said, what else could you draw for someone asking, how does local AI work, and how does it work here on my environment with local storage, or reaching out to Claude? So it goes through and it built this little ASCII diagram that shows you how the local machine, I hadn't even looked at this yet, but it just built all this while we were sitting here. Pretty amazing. So this is the $200 max plan that I'm using. And as you can see, this is all just green text on a black. So what it creates, though, from you just talking to it on this CLI command line interface, is it creates gorgeous websites. And I'll show you one more towards the end of the show. If you guys are interested, just say something in chat and I'll show you one of the things. Oh, I got double me. Let me turn off the double me.
Double me.
2 double guys. So if you guys ask, I'll put it in another screen for another question. But I have a couple of apps that I've built that I think you guys will want to see. Specifically, one that you'll want to see, Grant, which is I pulled the YouTube data from office hours, all the episodes, to see what we could do with it. So there's some interesting stuff that you could just ask Claude, take all this data and then build me a brilliant interface to show me visually how many people watch this show and sort them, rank them, so we could see the rundown versus extra hours versus the daily show, what numbers, how many subscribers came in, all that kind of stuff. So, and then I use Claude Cowork to build that. So it's cool stuff.
Very, very cool. Courtney.
Yeah, and if you want to step outside that walled garden, you won't have to use any baling wire or duct tape to tape together 4 $3,000 machines to do your AI. There's a number of solutions out there, like the one that guy was just demoing. Also, there's one from GMK Tech that uses AMD Ryzen AI Max, and you can get it with 128 gigs of RAM, which is accessible to the NPU, I think, or at least most of it is, because it's shared with the CPU and the GPU both share that 128 gigabytes of onboard RAM. So you can get it for $22,299. No baling wire required to strap together a bunch of expensive machines to do your own local AI stuff.
It's just a little side dig on the Mac. It was like, I'm pretty sure that they can stack sitting on top of each other without having to be wired together.
Well, you gotta put the duct tape on, and that silver duct tape, so it looks like one big unit. You know.
Fair enough. Very good. Next question.
Next one is in from Brian Stark, and Brian Stark in Nottingham, GB, Great Britain, is asking, what is the panel's opinion as to the value of AI aggregator sites like GlobalGPT that offer access to many AI services for a single subscription? Too good to be true, or the best option for cost?
Yeah. So my take on this a little bit is that I use ChatGPT, and similar to what Guy was talking about, I ran out of tokens at one point, particularly when I started using Codex, and Codex is the very similar thing to what Guy was showing, a command line interface for that gives access. You can give access to local files as well as being able to execute commands, and depending on how trusting or crazy you are, you can, like me, I'll often give it full access so that when it wants to go and do something and execute a command to find something out, or to make a change, or to upload a file, or download a file, or all those sorts of things, it can just go ahead and do it. And I blew through my tokens very quickly in a pro plan, and plus plan, and then I moved to pro, which is the $200 a month, and I've never hit a limit. And so and sometimes I'm running 3 projects, 3 totally separate terminal windows running 3 completely different projects at the same time, and it's obviously using a lot of tokens, and it hasn't I haven't hit a limit yet. I know you're not asking about limits. The thing that I have found is that by being all kind of in that one place, and then using ChatGPT on my phone and in the browser, is the context that it has, the continued context that it continues to have, so that when I ask something, or say I want to write, I did this just recently where I said, I just want to write something about my company, and it just pulled on a whole bunch of information that it had used before, because it knew me, it had the context for that. And so I think that's one of the trade-offs, right, is that if you use something that's pulling in different services, it reminds me of back in what year would this be? 99, 98, 98. I started using a search engine called Mama, search Mama, I think it was, maybe. And it was an aggregator, and so it would pull on, at that stage, Yahoo and Alta Vista and Lycos. Courtney, you going to add any more in there? There's a couple more of these search engines that were
Ask
all just
Jeeves, I think.
Ask Jeeves, there you go, yeah. All of these that were eaten alive by Google. But in a similar way, I can see that there is some value in that, and it would be very interesting to compare the results that the different AI engines would provide. But for time efficiency and that extra context awareness, I'm really happy just being in one. Guy?
Yeah, I was really excited when Jonas turned me on to T3.chat at first, because I was like, oh, I could save money and I could have access to all of these. But like you were saying, Grant, I quickly realized that it doesn't store the last thing that I talked about. And so it's just kind of gone. So I do pay $20 a month for Gemini. And there's certain things that Gemini can do because like Google owns YouTube. So there's certain walls that it can pass through that are put up that some of the others are just not allowed to go into. So there's also reasoning with ChatGPT and OpenAI. They got the best reasoning, but now Claude has the best writing of code. So if you were to rank things, it's like, what are you using AI for? And if it's just for asking it questions, then yeah, and any of them will be pretty good. Probably ChatGPT would be the best. But I think Claude just pulled ahead of everybody in with Claude Cowork, with having it actually take control of your browser, and they call it Claude MCP, where you say authorize and it just starts moving stuff around on your other screen, and it's pretty wild to watch as it's doing things for you. And I'm like, wow, I need a robot to watch my robot, because it got kind of crazy the other day when I was thinking of it like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've got agents that are working for agents, and now I need a master agent to keep an eye on my agents. It's like, this is getting wacky.
Yeah, it is. I find that too when I'm getting one thing to pass on to another thing and then come back to the, it's like you using different forms of the same AI, but asking it different questions and getting different prompts. I did see recently that Gemini is doing pretty good with photos. So I uploaded a standard photo and then got this back. I don't own that suit jacket. And the thing that it's doing better, I think Gemini is doing better with the images, is the face. It's keeping the face really consistent. Often with ChatGPT, it starts to get a little bit wacky, and you can tell that something's changed. Whereas I'm not sure that if you weren't told that that's AI, that you would think that it was. So yeah, there's different strengths in the different ones, and so there's something to that. Courtney.
Yeah, I'm going on a Gemini diet plan where that's just make me look 30 pounds lighter, and it does wonders for that. And you don't have to take any drugs. It's amazing.
I don't do live video as well.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of these paid AI tools because A, I'm too cheap, and B, I don't really have a need to generate a lot of code right now. But I have noticed in my observation of others using it that a lot of people are, for generative AI, especially for video generation, a lot of people are using this Higgs field, and it does an amazing amount of stuff for generating videos. And they have all these tools that are consolidated on their site. So you can, use Kling and Lip Sync Studio and a variety of these different models that are accessible. Now, I'm not sure how all of this works with your accounts. If you have a paid account at any of those particular services, that it has access to, does it automatically track your usage and apply your tokens for each of those services and keep track and bill you do a composite
So
billing?
how these aggregators work is they simply just can ask is kind of like a electronic payment. So when you go to pay for something at a supermarket, it's
Hmm.
simply, and you're using Apple Pay, very similar because Apple Pay, of course, is token based as well. So essentially, what it is Apple, you tap your Apple Pay, and then that token will go off to your bank, and then the bank will say, yes, this person has this amount of funds available, process the payment. And it's very similar. These aggregators are simply saying, does this person have enough tokens with this service to process this? Yes, no. And if it does, you'll process. If it's no, it'll come back saying, we'll give you a free version. We'll give you whatever the free version is. So they make it kind of seamless. So they don't say just like no. They'll just do the free version rather than the paid version. They may tell you that it's free version, but as these aggregators, what they're doing is very similar to how Apple Pay works with the token based. Yeah.
And then suddenly find out you're token bankrupt. Yeah.
That's right. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Andre Dole in Berlin, and he asks, Courtney, could you please elaborate on the USB buffer issues that you experience from time to time? You seem to be more or less the only one on the panel having that issue. Not enough active USB hubs?
Not anymore. I think I'm still using the same computer, and I think that my problem originally was due to the fact that I was using a Rodecaster Pro 2 along with the Atem Mini, all going into the USB hubs, all going into USB 3 on this Dell computer, whose I think their buffer handling of their chipset drivers was not good. They have not updated it. And I think what would happen would be a difference in frame rate of the amount of USB frame data coming in and the service routines that service that USB data and output it to the video switcher and output it to Zoom, et cetera, it's coming in faster than it's going out. And eventually the buffer overflows. And they didn't do a very good job of resetting that buffer and saving the incoming data as they reset the buffer to restart again. And it would generate a bunch of glitches in the video. Now I've noticed that since I've taken my Rodecaster Pro out of the area, and I'm only using my Atem Mini as an input to the Rodecaster Video S. So I now have only one USB stream, well actually two, but one for audio, one for video, but both coming out of the Rodecaster Video S. So I think the only disruptions I'm hearing when the buffer overflow happens is in the audio. I'm not seeing any disruptions in the video like I was seeing before, where the video buffer would overflow in Zoom and the audio as well, because it would do it at the same time, and it would happen every 15 minutes. So that's how you kind of deduce that it's a buffer overflow issue that has to do with the service rate of the USB service routine, and the incoming data rate, will overflow at a certain amount of time at a certain rate. And so it would always happen like 15 minutes on the nose every time. I haven't clocked it now since I changed the USB sources, so hopefully it'll be a little less disruptive now.
Next question.
Another dig at Courtney and his system. Got this one in from Texas, Jeff.
I get no respect, I tell you. I get no respect.
No respect. Let's see you do that, Triple Lindy. Did I hear correctly that Courtney is going to switch to a Mac for his office hours kit?
No.
Is that... I feel like that might be a friendly fire.
That's Keith Lee. Keith Lee is twisting the knife there.
One F Jeff is
he's all on
another PC guy, and friendly
who
fire
just bought a
going
Mac,
to Courtney,
who was just at Best Buy buying a Mac. So we'll see.
I have a Mac. I'm using it right now. You may not notice it, but it's holding up the monitor that is in front of me. It adds a nice 2.5 inches to the height of that monitor, and it works great. It's also powering my USB speaker here out of its USB port. So that's it's working as a USB.
So it's a USB power supply and a monitor coaster.
And a monitor elevator. Yes.
What type of Mac is it?
It's a Mac Mini, Intel Mac Mini. Of course,
right.
Because I'm running Windows on it. It's running Windows, I do have several Macs. I have 3 MacBook Pros and 2 Mac Minis, and I used to have a G4, but I sold it. But you know, they.
You don't have any Apple Silicon.
I had
though,
Windows.
right?
I ran Windows on all of them,
Yeah, right.
as well as the Mac operating system. I'd go back and forth.
But you haven't had anything new in the last 5 or 6 years or something. Is that right?
No, I'm trying to get rid. I have so many computers I have to get rid of. Just the thought of going through all of my computers that are in the closet and pulling out the hard drives and crushing them before I can take them to Goodwill or somewhere to donate them for electronic recycling.
Right.
I'm not up to that task, I tell you.
Fair enough. Next question.
Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC asks, I bought an Atem Mini, but find the hardware very limited, so have to run the software to get keys and media, etc. If I have to dedicate a computer to run the Atem software, I don't see any advantage compared to just running OBS or ecamm. Prove me wrong.
Oh, Carl.
So two things. One, it actually has HDMI inputs. You won't find that on a computer. So Mac Mini doesn't have HDMI inputs. So you can get baseband input. That's the biggest thing about a hardware switcher is it has all the baseband inputs and the baseband outputs, which, as I said, that's not available on a MacBook Pro or Mac Mini or even a Mac Pro. The other thing is with the Mac Mini, depending on which Mac Mini you have, but let's just say you have Mac Mini Pro, just $299. With Mix Effect Pro, that will expand the usability. As far as when you see keying, I think the keyer in all the Blackmagic equipment is beyond pretty much most for live. If you're doing post-production, of course, it's a little different. But as an interface, as far as getting baseband in, baseband out, it's pretty big. Now, if you go to the G2, then there's nothing that comes close to the G2 as far as there's no computer, Windows, Linux, Mac that comes close to what the G2 Extreme can do. But when they turn on now, the other thing that you get with hardware is you don't need a computer. You can just literally run hardware. You can just literally have a video assist. That's it. So with the video assist and a Mac Mini, you can run a whole show. You need to see what's coming out. That's what the video assist will give you. You can go out via the Ethernet out to your destination, and all your inputs can come in. So you can be very compact on the go. You can run it off, USB battery banks. So there is one thing above that which you don't need, and it doesn't tie up a computer. So if you do have a Mac, you can use a Mac for playout. It doesn't tie you up. Of course, you can use the if you want to change certain stuff in the media pool. Yes, you're going to need that. But if you're not using the media pool and stuff, you can just run it. Kind of like headless. Well, essentially, it's really without the computer attached. But there are advantages where software comes in. Software comes in is for really bespoke kind of setups that you may want, and if you're coming in, like if all your assets are coming in that aren't baseband. So if you're working in a non-baseband world, NDI obviously, but if you're coming in via Zoom, so using Zoom OSC or Zoom ISO, those kind of things, then yes, then a software switcher makes sense. You can complement the two, it's what we call cascading. So cascading is a good approach, but you need to be careful because you can't really hand cascade off to someone else. It's kind of complicated. We have to make two switches to make a single switch, if you know what I mean. But definitely, if you don't have Mix Effect Pro, look at that. That'll expand your usability of any Atem Mini or any Atem in general. But I do understand what you mean by cascading. And so some people do cascade. They use the Atem as the interface. So to bring in the baseband, to bring in the HDMI or SDI, and then they will use that to come into, let's say, vMix or Mimo, and that's just a single source. And then they'll bring in soft sources like NDI or websites or playback in their software. So I do understand that kind of cascading, but the power is the inputs and outputs that are baseband.
Courtney.
Yeah, what Carl said. And there are things, depending upon, like you said, what Atem you have, or if you have the Rodecaster video, you can build macros. You can build, with Mix Effect Pro, basically you're building macros that you're running on a separate computer, an iPad, let's say, or your phone. But so you are going to need a separate computer to actually run those mix effects, I believe. But once you build macros, if you have one of the extremes, mini extreme, where you have the 6 macro buttons, you can build macros in to do DVE effects and set up super sources. You have a similar thing in the $500 Video S. See, my look, I can put myself here in the corner. This is a super source, and I just have it now. I'm not running the software right now. I'm just hitting a button on the switcher, and it's crossfading to that. So once you build your super source stuff, it'll handle all of the keying and generating a round cutout and putting a border around it and all that every time. And I don't have to save anything. I turn it off, I power it off and power it back on. Don't even have to run the software unless I want to change the layouts. And so once I build all of those scenes, they call it in the Rodecaster, or macros, they call it in the Atems. Once they're built and stored as the startup, as the startup routines in the Atems, or just the standard show, I think a show file in the Rodecaster, it stays resident. One thing I don't like, one thing I like about the Rodecaster video is it has a media pool that's a heck of a lot bigger than the Atem Minis. Atem Minis, you only get a number of frames, still frames, or like 33 frames. Whoopee! You can play a video that's all of 40 frames long. You have 20 gigs of storage on the Rodecaster video that is resident inside the switcher itself, that stays there. And so if you want to play a video open, let's say for a show, or sound effects, any particular music or intros, things like that, you can load them all into the media pool on the switcher itself. You don't even have to have a computer hooked up, and it will have access to all those. You do have to have a computer to load that media pool, though. And I think if they update the firmware, hopefully so that you can FTP into that internal storage, that would be great. But they have not done that yet. And it has other quirks in that it only accepts still frames into that media pool that are less than 1920 pixels wide. So if you have something from your still you shot on your cell phone, or a still camera, it's not going to load. You're going to have to load a third-party piece of software, downscale it to 1920 by 1080 or 1920 wide, and whatever tall, before you load it into the media pool, because it will not accept it. Fix that, Rode. Talk to them down there in Australia, will you? Will you, Carl?
Yeah, that's
knock
right.
on their door. Tell them they got to fix that. Hey, it's the software that runs on the PC or the Mac. They could easily put a high-quality downscaler into that would downscale any media that you want to drag into it before it stores it in the media pool, even if the internal hardware can only handle a certain resolution for scaling. They could do it. They just have to rewrite the software.
Make it sound so easy. Dave, I mean, you make a valid point. You bring up the issue with it. I mean, I've got one here. I would argue that there's a big difference between having to log in essentially to the device and configure it, and then having it do all the work, versus, I need to use a PC, I need to use a computer to configure it, so I might as well just run a software switcher. I think that's very different than when you talk about doing keys and things. I mean, the keys are all there. You can even move them around as far as where the box goes on there. And if you wanted a very customized one, then once it's set, when you're turning it on and off on this device, away it goes. And you're not... the thing that's so stable about them, I think, is the processing that it does in hardware, in the FPGA, on the chip, and so which is really solid. And so I think it's two different things. The difference is that you're talking about a computer to control, which I mean, lots of people use really old laptops to be able to run the Atem software. It doesn't need a hefty machine at all, if you want to do that. So yeah, I think it's two different things when we're talking about hardware versus software. And as Carl said, the combination may be a good middle ground, where you're doing a whole bunch of switching in the hardware and then doing your final step where you might be overlaying some graphics and things in software and bringing that in and streaming it somewhere, or bringing it into video conferencing or whatever. So, but it's a good point. All right, next question.
Next one in from Peter Sargent, Round Rock, Texas, asking, the latest release tiles for Zoom can be controlled via OSC, and there is a module for companion available. However, there is no feedback to said module, as the OSC communications is one way. Are there no companion presets available? Thoughts?
Guy?
Yeah, I've been playing with this a little bit. This is the new 1.2 release that just came out. One of the things that came up over the weekend when this question came up was I only saw one that said hole punch, which if you haven't seen this feature, this is the hole punch feature where you could have, let's say 24, I don't know how many that is actually, I'd have to count them, but this hole punch, you can see that you could move this around. And so you could do like a green screen and then put yourself there in that box and have all the people surrounding you. In Companion, if you type in a word, start to type in Zoom, you'll see all the things that are available, like replace by user here, disable gallery, start queue timer. So there is just a ton of OSC commands here. And then up here, you're starting to see my Zoom OSC and ISO modules. So what Peter's saying is there is no pretty presets like this, where you go here and you go presets and you have breakout, like where you could just drag that on there and it's nice and pretty. And then you've got feedbacks and everything. So I bet it's coming. I don't want to speak for Andy and crew, but I'm just happy that they've come this far, because talk about super sources and things that you need more MEs for. Tiles, if you buy it, I think it's like 50 for Zoom, 50 people PPA pay per attendee. You just make somebody a hub host or yourself, and then you have access to Zoom ISO, you have access to tiles, you have access to Zoom Graphics Toolkit, and 100 or maybe 125 for the year. So that's a lot of stuff for the year when you get into playing with it. And when you do start to use things like these stream decks for those buttons, it becomes very powerful. I just turned on one of our local studios to using Zoom ISO for their show, and they're like, why didn't we do this so long ago? They were screen scraping, and it was just having to route everything hardware with decimators, and it was a lot of rigmarole. And so now they just go click, assign. Actually, I showed them the buttons, and so they were able to program their companion buttons, and now they just click, 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 click. It's very cool.
Yeah, specifically around the feedback. I think the feedback for tiles is very apparent when you're looking at the output of what you're doing. If you're changing some of the presets, you see the preset change. I get that it's nice to have feedback through to Companion where it can change the color of the button or something as to show which one's active. I think in tiles it's a bit more obvious what it is that you're doing because of how much you change it, how much the presets sort of change. But it would be nice. It would be nice to have some feedback that Companion can see. It is handy on the Zoom ISO when you are able to, sort of choosing, which output you're using, and then, what you want to select it to. Things like that is nice. So cool. Next question.
Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington asks, this week I saw an event organizer get community revolt due to using an attractive blonde open quote AI friend, close quote, for some event info. Do you think that will see them to be open quote good enough, close quote, for basic communications? Or are we humans allergic to listening to Gen AI?
Courtney?
Does the wife know about the AI friend, though? That is the question. Yeah, I'm not sure what the revolt was about, but I've noticed online and YouTube a lot of times, a lot of influencers that do regular daily podcasts or reviews of stuff have turned to using their avatars of themselves, AI avatars of themselves, with their own trained voices so that it looks and acts just like they do. And the tip off is when it pronounces some personal name incorrectly. then you
or a city name.
Oh wait, that's an AI. That's not even the real guy. And then then there's a certain amount of disdain that bubbles up, going, God, he didn't even take the time to, fire up the camera and the lights and get in front of the camera himself. He just he wrote the script and shoved it into AI, and it generated generative AI to using his own avatar and his own voice to create the video and post it up on YouTube. And the AI does all the work for him. So I think there is a little bit of a revolt going on when people recognize that it's AI, but I think half the time people may not even realize that what they're looking at is AI generated, unless you've got a typo in there where you have a period and a comma and it says period comma in the middle of your script, because it will do that. Or it'll mispronounce names that are everyone knows how to pronounce for 20 years. It'll pronounce that wrong.
I have that one. My auntie is a Dorothy, and she goes by Dot. And so when you use text to speech and you say Dot and her husband Rodney, it comes out as a full stop, as a period. Yes. Period. And Rodney, it's like, that's not what I asked for. I was saying Dot. Carl?
So the place where I'm seeing this come up is actually in what we kind of call industrial films, maybe occupational health and safety films. So we're actually starting to see this come up now. So we're actually seeing AI presenters essentially going through what this video will contain, yada yada, and it's just an AI presenter, and because they can do that in under 15 seconds. If you have a paid account, you can get that kind of length, and it works. Now, I'm not saying it's some attractive blonde, but they're actually just getting what would generally be just generic actor you'd usually hire for these industrial films to read a script. It doesn't, and it also means that a human can actually read the script if they need to, but they don't need to. They're saving a lot of money on these industrial films. They are still filming stuff as far as the industrial process, so like the occupational health and safety in the workplace, they've got to show a certain process in that workplace. But for someone to introduce what they're going to go through and to conclude what you've seen, they can simply just use an AI presenter, standing on essentially on a green screen, and you can put that green screen into the real, occupation location. But I'm starting to see that come up now in occupational films that have come out in the last 6 months. So these industrial films, they are using AI presenters to present what would be very dry material, but required material sometimes.
Yeah, I think in general that AI is creating a lot of noise, and that what's happening is we're fine tuning to real humans more and more. And so I don't want more content. I want less. I want less content, and this is what's happening. It's either TikTok, less than a minute, or it's 3-hour Joe Rogan podcasts, and I think people want both. And so, but I don't want a 3-hour AI generated podcast, right? Like that's where I want to hear the interaction between people and the long form context and nuance of conversation. That's fascinating. But I don't want AI to be trying to generate a whole bunch of that. AI can give me a 10-second overview of something great, but yeah, and then the video stuff. I mean, the videos that are very impressive AI generated ones are the ones where they're like home video style ones or phone camera ones, where it's like showing something that's just happened. And I catch myself often. It's like it needs to be the third or fourth view where I'm like, this is AI. It's like it's getting very, very good. And so yeah, we've got to watch it a bit. I think there's we want to push more to humanity, and so where it really matters. I think perhaps in Carl's example of corporate video training videos and things like that. I mean, often they were pretty boring before anyway. So if you can use AI to make them a bit punchier and works a bit better to get the point across, great. But from either an entertainment or a in personal coaching or life coaching sort of element, that type of stuff, I think needs the human touch and continues to need that. But Courtney?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the AI version of the turbo encabulator explanation speech, if you've seen that, if you know what that is.
Yeah. Okay.
Just do a search for that turbo encabulate.
Nice. Very good. Next question.
Next one in from Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC, asking, I'm using the Plus version of ChatGPT and now have more than a dozen various chats. The LLM is starting to say encouraging observations and connections between the various chats. It's a bit creepy, and I can see how less tech folks think it is a friend.
Yeah. Courtney?
I've noticed this in the A Echo Plus from Amazon, which I have one sitting over there, so I don't want to wake her up and disturb, get her wrath upon me. She's gotten a lot smarter, but she does tend to get a lot wordy. And I've found that you can tell her, please be a little more concise, and she will. So you can now use these ChatGPT and Home assistants that have now gotten Gemini into the Google Home product. You can now tell them that you don't have to suck up to me anymore. Don't tell me what a great question. Just the facts, ma'am. You need the Friday dragnet kind of response. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. To have it respond. And it does get a little creepy, I've noticed, because I'm using Copilot, which is Microsoft's built-in. I don't pay for it. It just, it tracks you, but it only works if you're logged in with your Microsoft account. So it keeps track of all the questions you've asked it. And I've been asking a lot of medical questions to explain radiologist reports, which are, clinical reports that come from doctors that you don't know what they're talking about. And you cut that out and you paste it into Copilot or ChatGPT and say, explain this to me as a layman would. And it gives me a really good explanation. But now I'm starting to ask it questions about some drug or something that the doctor has recommended. And it goes, well, taking into account your condition, oh, really? And I didn't give it my condition, but in previous questions, it had determined that from the questions that I was asking. So it's tracking. When you're asking it a series of questions, it takes the context of those original questions into account. So it can sound a little creepy because even your friends don't have that good a memory.
Taking into account your predisposition to Windows machines, we would not
taking into account your hate of Macintosh.
That's right, exactly. Yes.
We prefer not to recommend anything from the fruit computer.
We want to make sure that you're careful about your hatred towards Apple, as it will cause inflammation in your body, and it could be linked. Yes, I have seen some of this, and you can control a little bit in the settings and adding some prompts.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, but I asked ChatGPT at one point. You can do projects as sort of a collection of chats, and I was asking whether the chats can see each other or see the context from each other, and no, it couldn't. But it did explain when it was saying, no, I can't see those, but I do have general context that's collected across all chats. And so there's some things that it does pick up on and keeps, but not the full, all of the context of all of the chats. And so there is something there that is clever. And I was mentioning that before when it knew things about the company, my company, when I was, doing some emails and things. And so it is handy. I think the personal aspect of it is what is interesting. And I have heard that people are getting a lot of counseling, therapy, using AI. And I think, like most things, that moderation is the key, and that it could actually be giving very, very good therapeutic advice for people, and kind of building a little bit of a relationship. And I know that is a bit weird, and you've got to be really careful with that. But I have found that I'm using it as a research partner, as a tool. I've been going for walks sometimes, and I'm able to just plan out a whole bunch just by talking through things. And then I get to the end of my walk, and I've got now a succinct, plan of what to do, because I've been researching as I've been walking. So I think I think creepy is right. I think amazing is right, and that's the paradox of this whole thing. I think we can be equally concerned and excited about the possibilities of what we do with AI. But yeah, I think it can be fine-tuned a little bit as we go, and be careful how much we fall into the relationships with it. So, all right. Next question. We've got a couple there. Go.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what does everyone think of the ASM Leviasynth? And he's got a link here.
And when we say everyone, we're really just saying Carl, because
I'm really interested in what everyone else has to say about it.
Yeah, that's
Courtney
right.
probably has something to say about it. But, so ASM is a very interesting company. They make traditional instruments for essentially the Chinese market. So you think violin, saxophones. So they make all those instruments for all those people learning those instruments, all those kids learning instruments in schools and everyone. So they need to pump out a lot of instruments. So this is a company that specializes in that. And then like 3 people from that company said, hey, can we make a synth a few years ago? And they did. They made something called the Hydrasynth. It became an overnight sensation with the real big synth snobs in the world. It was 100% digital. And it's become one of the greatest sound design tools. So if you hear sound design synthesizers in TV shows and a lot of stuff now, it's a good chance it's going to be a Hydrasynth if it doesn't. And then we waited for years and years. They made different versions of this. They made a smaller version, a larger version, a desktop version. So, but using the same engine, they expanded the engine from 8 voices, 16 voices, but essentially same engine, kind of like the X32. They made like a million different versions of the X32, similar thing, but in synthesizers. And we've been waiting for the next synth, the complete new architecture, and this is it. So the Leviasynth is quite crazy, relatively cheap for what it is. So it's less than $2,000 US. So this is the sweet word price at the moment. So that's with the tariff. So what this is pretty straightforward. 16 voices. Now they do have the Hydrasynth Deluxe has 16 voices, but where this is very different, this has 8 oscillators per voice. So that's an enormous amount. That's 128 oscillators. Now these oscillators can be arranged in FM, so they can be arranged in modulator carrier. They can be arranged in pulse width modulation. They can be arranged in virtual analogs, so all that kind of stuff. Each voice has like 15 envelopes and crazy amount of filters, digital filters. But the thing that this adds that they haven't had before is they're now adding a 4-pole analog filter per voice. So, and with a drive, so analog drive and a 4-pole analog filter. So this is a hybrid. Now the 4-pole analog filter, for those playing out there, that's similar to a Moog filter. So so you can choose to use digital filter, analog filter, or a mixture of both. So what this adds, but this is a humongous machine. What this is capable of is kind of ridiculous. And we're going to have to take 6 months before people can actually crack in deep into this. It took about a year for most people to actually understand Hydrasynth and for it to be actually fully grappled what it can do. And I think that's going to be the same with this particular machine. So essentially what it is, it's a very large synth inside, 16 voices. Each voice has 8 oscillators. And I think from memory, I'll take a quick look, but I'm pretty sure I'll just take a look at the architecture quickly. So it's
can I
8
suggest,
oscillators.
Can I suggest, Carl, that we could do a little after show in after hours?
Yeah, we could.
For people that want to
just understand
this
is humongous. So if you were trying to make this an analog world, it would be as big as a dining table. Let's just put it that way.
Very good. Nice. It's good. It was good to have Carl, who might be the only panelist on all of the shows that could answer in that sort of level about synths. All right, last question there, Guy.
Chris Widener, Indianapolis, and he asks, Nimio from Softvelum, anyone have experience with it, good or bad? I've used larix from them to great success in the past.
We've got crickets on that one, I think. Got no one? Oh, Guy, what have you seen?
I just quickly went and looked at it. I do remember seeing this come across the radar months ago, but it was like a GitHub repository where you had to go download the code. So it's mostly for developers. But what I'm fascinated by is we've seen this in the past where we needed really, really low latency WebRTC sends, and we needed to be able to control how good or what the data rate was and the codec and the efficiency because of the machines that it was installed on. And at the other side, if they could decode them fast enough to be able to watch a multi-view in high quality and be able to cut a show. So I get what they're doing, and I'd love to be able to see it in production and in the real world, just this well, if we could get down into the milliseconds, with super high quality. I mean, a lot of people just say just use Zoom. In fact, that Bella and Petra show that Alex did out of the airship studio, they were just using Zoom. And, it's a little bit behind, but good enough for government work or two teenagers in a San Francisco studio.
Yeah, it was good. Courtney?
Yeah, I haven't used it because it's Mac only, or iOS and Mac OS only. So I have written my own players. This looks like a development tool, as Guy was mentioning, for the tools to create playback stuff of your own. So to build your own tools for doing playback on those Mac platforms. So haven't had a chance to use it with Softvelum. I do have the Techno-Weenies video playback toolkit, though, that can play back up to 18 HD videos at the same time in little windows. So, hey, would I need it? No, I don't do it. Mine all runs on Windows.
Very good. It was good to be able to mention that again. I'm glad you had the opportunity to mention that. All right, now we get to our content recommendations. And while our panel are thinking about that, I just wanted to remind you that you can help out with office hours financially. If you go to officehours.global/donate, you could consider making a donation. There's a few costs, quite a few costs that it's all run by volunteers, all volunteers making it happen, but there are some technical costs and costs in making the organisation all work and the non-profit. So if you would consider donating, that would be lovely. All right, Guy, what's your content recommendation?
Mine's going to be an AI one. There's this gentleman, his name is Nate, and Nate has this video called Task Queues Are Replacing Chat Interfaces. Here's why. And then he has a Claude Cowork demo. So after watching this, I went ahead and I was like, what's this Claude Cowork thing? Let me see how it works. And then I saw, you got to get in the beta program. And then I saw, if you have Macs, then you already have it. You don't have to wait for the beta, even though I just filled out the form. So I went ahead and installed it on my Mac and started playing with it. And I'm like, OMG, this is pretty mind-blowing. But it's from this video where he starts showing that you could have multiple things going on at the same time. So you can get Claude, when I'm on the command line interface like I showed you, I just sit there and wait for it to finish. Whereas what he was doing was he was like, new chat. And so he starts to show you how you can get something going like, you're building this website. Now let me make another inquiry. And then it gets cooking on that. And then you make another one. So it's helpful when you do have the $100 plan, because like you had the problem, Grant, where you run out of tokens. I was in the middle of building an app and I ran out of tokens. And I was just like, after listening to some of these guys, they were like, dude, where else can you hire a developer for $100 for a year, $1,200? They're normally like $150,000. So really, and then the amount of work that it's cranked out for me. Somebody was asking like, I'd like to see one of those websites. So from that CLI, this is something that I had to build where it can show like how many episodes of the rundown. So I'm building dashboards like this to be able to help the board see what's going on with like concurrent viewers over time and traffic sources. But like concurrent viewers over time, it's not something that the API exposes, but I can open up the window and I could say, go sick that information, Claude Cowork, and it opens up my browser. It goes and scrapes all that information, builds it into a pretty graph and stores it for later. So instead of it just going away after 30 days, I can retain that information and I can call on it later and make these pretty dashboards. But I did all this from the CLI. I did not make that, but none of those graphs. It just built it all for me. So it's pretty impressive what it can do.
It's very impressive. Yeah. Carl, what's your documentary?
So mine's going to be an interesting one. So I recently rewatched and re-listened to something that was made 12 years ago. And it's called Humans Need Not Apply. It was a video essay done by CGP Grey He put it on. It's a very different kind of video. He does more 5-minute kind of animated videos. This was a very different kind of video he did. So Humans Need Not Apply was made in 2014. It talks about certain types of jobs, and this was theorizing. 2014 was more theorizing of certain types of jobs that may be supplanted by AI. AI in software and AI and artificial and robots. So an actual, essentially what we call Optimus now. And so Stephen Hawking actually replied to this video. He actually gave his own little short essay about this video. So you can actually go read Stephen Hawking's response to this. And Stephen Hawking agreed that a vast majority of what we call blue collar jobs may go this way. Now, also, because CGP Grey also at the same time was making a podcast. So there is also a podcast now. It's over a couple of episodes that he talks about this, but I'm pretty sure that if you go around 24, maybe 23, 25, so this was the time when the video was released. So in each of these episodes, I'd start probably with 23 for Hello Internet. And listen to that. They're great listens anyway for people who want to listen. I'm mentioned on episode 50, so short plug for myself. But nice. But 23, 24, 25 is when he was talking about this, and they go really deep into this. So in the podcast, they go much deeper into the discussion, and there's a lot of talk about huge unemployment because of all people being put out of work and not realizing that they're going to just be retrained or become managers. So someone's got to train the AI. So people who blue collar jobs have to train the bots to how to do their job. So people just get elevated to a supervisor rather than just being a worker Joe. So it is fascinating to listen to now, 12 years later, after he released this, and to go look at all the commentary that surrounded this video. This was a very big video at the time. A lot of people had a lot of opinions about this. Is before any of the AI we know about. So, but he did make certain predictions. He talked about cars, autonomous cars. At the time, I believe in 2014 was when Tesla launched what they called the automatic advanced automatic driving, essentially automatic cruise control with lane keeping, their very first version of that. So it wasn't full self-driving, which they have now, of course, but it was the first precursor to that. He talks about that autonomous driving as well, and the fact that it will probably become illegal to drive in the future, which I think Norway's not too far away from that, to be honest. But it is fascinating to watch. So it's called Humans Need Not Apply. I believe he's changed the name of the video, which is Humans Will Become Horses. But so he's changed the name because he changes his thumbnails, because that's what you can do. So it's quite clever to do that sometimes, to change the name of your videos and change your thumbnails 10 years on when things have changed. And also Hello Internet, the podcast series. Now I suggest listen to all of Hello Internet. There's only like 130 episodes total. He ceased making them just before COVID hit. But yeah, so around episodes 23, 24, 25 is when Gray talks about that video, and in particular goes deep dive into where he thinks AI will go. It's a fascinating listen 12 years now in the future to what he was talking about.
Wow, good one. Courtney.
I've got a couple of them. One is you can find on YouTube, which is free. There was a guy in the 80s named Tim Hunkin. I think he was British, who had the secret life of, and then fill in the blank, mainly machines like washing machine, the fax machine. And he created all these little cute little automatons and things. And he does these line drawn animations as he does an explanation of each of these devices that are out there. This was done in like 1987, and it's tremendously funny. They're now all available. They've been upscaled from their original PAL up to 1920, to a little higher resolution, so you can see them on YouTube. The other is for a movie we watched, One Battle After Another, which was Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film. It's available on HBO. You get to see Leonardo DiCaprio without his hair and makeup people and his wardrobe people, because he's dressed in this bathrobe, some sweatpants and a t-shirt, and his hair is so lovely. That's available now. An interesting film, very, very timely in today's situation. And it is kind of one battle after another. Benicio del Toro is a perfect sensei of a martial arts studio who is, has another profession, and he's perfect in that particular role. So take a look out for that.
Cool. I would just say that I finally caught up on Avatar, number 3, and I really enjoyed it. But what I enjoyed even more was listening to podcasts with James Cameron and different interviews that he's done, particularly talking about like it's funny, we think about directors that have been around for a long time, and producers, filmmakers. He's only done 9 movies, right? But he's like invested all of his time and energy in those 9. And one of the coolest things that I heard in a podcast about the first Avatar was that at the end of it, it did quite well. At the end, he got the studio to agree to keep on all of the cast and not the cast, all of the crew, all of the key players in the crew for 2 more months. And what they did was they basically did a RFI, room for improvement process. And so they spent a whole bunch of time going over their part in the movie making process, and talked about things that they didn't need to do and things that they could do better. And then they had a retreat and they all presented to the whole team what they could do better. I really loved that, which obviously is shown then in episode 2, or sort of the next movie 2, the improvements that they made. And then there's lots of really juicy stuff about filmmaking that I really enjoyed. And so anyway, that's my pick. All right.
That's interesting because Lucasfilm did the same thing, of course, after the first Star Wars. They did an RFI for it, and they moved to Marin. They moved from LA up to the Bay Area and all that. So yeah, but of James Cameron, of course, is very good friends with Lucasfilm. So yeah,
get to see a lot of people in spandex suits with little ping pong balls stuck on.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Yep. Very good. Thank you. We have still gone a little bit over time, but that tends to be what happens. The Tlaloc traversal today, 25,000 miles, 41,000 kilometers, 200 million bananas to scale. Guy, I do want you to build the app that compares the bananas for scale as well. So we need to start tracking for each show the bananas for scale. Maybe someone will pick that up. We say thank you all the time to all the team that do it, but it just dawned on me again today, or kind of struck me that it's pretty special what we're doing here. And the fact that we get to hang out like this with people all across the world and talk about things that we're interested in, that we work in or play in. And so it's really special, particularly for the people that are working behind, that are not engaging in the conversation necessarily. They're just making it happen. And so for Taylor and Alan, Jason, Jeff, Peter and Laura, thank you especially for jumping in there and making it all work. And to the couple of dudes on the panel with me, thank you for hanging out for a little bit. And we'll do it all again next week. But here's an important thing, if you're listening right now, is we're going to jump into after hours. And so sometimes we have a little conversation that happens afterwards. We're going to try to do that in after hours. So if you want to jump over there and you want to geek out more with Carl about synths or any other questions that we may have, you could ask Courtney some questions about Macs and see what he comes up with. But yeah, we're just going to, for people that are available, we're going to move over there now. Awesome. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.